Chapter-3. Today, Jayaji will enlighten us on the motivation behind action.
सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः.
Before we continue, we'll take a brief recap of what we discussed yesterday, especially since there are a few new faces here. And I'm glad that at least some of you have made that effort to get the younger generation. It's very heartening to see that. So we looked at the value of the Bhagavad Gita in modern times, and that the role that it plays in our lives is immense. We looked at the two paths that are available to us, the Shreya, the path of the good, and Preya, the path of the pleasant. The two paths that are available, because Arjuna asks a question to Krishna, why are you forcing me into this horrific action of killing my own people when you have eulogized knowledge earlier? So Krishna says there have always been two paths, the path of knowledge for the contemplative, the path of action for the active, people with a lot of desires. So most of us fall in that category and we must act. Then we looked at the source of action. When you perform an action, whatever it be, whether it is cooking or playing tennis or golf, where does the action come from? Desire. How did the desire come in you and not in your spouse? Because you have a vasana for it. Vasana means inherent liking, innate tendency towards a particular thing. This is because you were born with it and during your lifetime you have invested in it. Then we looked at Vedanta's most valuable contribution to the understanding of the human mind, the classification of thoughts into three categories: Sattva, A grade; Rajas, B grade; and Tamas, C grade. And the three ways of tackling desire. So, now, before we continue with the verses, let's take a look at action, work. Why do we go to work? Why does anybody work? Most people work out of compulsion. What else to do? I have to go out and work, so I work. Now, when you work like that, with that kind of attitude, your attitude towards work is that of drudgery. Oh God, I have to do it. So you do that, like, as we saw yesterday, the least possible. You make mistakes, errors, you don't care. That kind of lackadaisical attitude, which a lot of us have, a lot of Indians have, that doesn't work because there's no motivation. Then most people work for money. That's why the standard carrot and stick method. You dangle a carrot before people and they run. But carrot is meant for donkeys, not for human beings. How can you degrade yourself to the level where you're running only because there's a carrot dangling before you? And incidentally, donkey never gets the carrot. It's always that distance away from you. Passion. A few people work not for money, not out of compulsion, but because they have a passion for it. There are musicians who are completely dedicated to music. There's one of the most wonderful classical musicians, Pandit Dinkar Kaikini. Apparently, when he was studying in Lucknow, studying music, uh, someone was there, and I met her many years later, and she told me this incident. She said, after 5:36, the whole place used to be empty, except for one room. And that one room had a light on till 11:30 at night. And that was that time he wasn't Pandit Dinkar Kaikini doing his riyaz. And that passion he had till the last day of his life. So it could be music, it could be art, it could be whatever. So there's a lovely movie. Did I mention that? Peaceful Warrior. Yesterday, did I mention? Did I mention Peaceful Warrior yesterday? No. She's heard me so many times, she's confused. So there's a beautiful movie called Peaceful Warrior. And it's about a real life story. It's based on a real life story of 3 students from Stanford University who are athletes. So they're gunning for the Olympic gold. And the preparation doesn't start 2 months earlier, it starts years before. So one young man in Stanford University, he's confident that he would be selected for the Olympics and that he would win. And once he goes into a gas station, and that gas station attendant starts a conversation with him. So they make friends. And that gas station attendant is the guru. And this fellow's the disciple. I mean, not officially, but it turns out like that. And they have wonderful conversations. But one day, the gas station attendant asks him a simple question. What if you don't win the Olympics? Don't win the gold? This man flies into a rage. He says, who the hell are you to say that? You're a failure. You're only a gas station attendant. Look at me. I'm rich. I'm handsome. And I'm going to win the gold. And he's so angry. He gets onto his bike and takes off at high speed. And he goes through a red light and has a horrific accident. His dreams are shattered. And that is when this gas station attendant helps him come back. So it's not just physical, it's the mental preparation. So one of the things he tells him, the boy goes to him and says, ever since I can remember, all I wanted to be was Lord of the Rings. Rings in gymnastics. So the gas station attendant tells him, what kind of attitude do you have? Do you know that you are not even in control? You don't know whether you'll be selected for the Olympics or not. There's someone else who's going to select. And he's unlikely to select you because you've had this accident. Everyone looks for winners, right? And even if you're selected, whether you win or not doesn't depend only on your performance. It depends on so many other factors. And you're hanging on that flimsy thread for your happiness, for your well-being, for your whole life revolves around that. How can you live like that? Yes, all these things you can't control. But nobody can take away the fact that you are an outstanding athlete. And just focus on that. And he helps him to find fulfillment in the very action. And he says, that's exactly what the Bhagavad Gita says. Find fulfillment in the action, not in the fruit. Because the fruit is beyond your control. The fruit is, as we saw yesterday, it depends on how other people view your action. Why are you dependent on that? That's when you work for passion, whatever it is. You could be a CA struggling with figures all your life. But if you have a passion for it, you enjoy it. You could be a scientist sitting in a lab all your life. But for you, that is heaven. Whatever you do. For me, it is this. When I wake up early in the morning and I open my books, every day I'm grateful that someday that God gave me this opportunity to study this. And how many years of happiness it's given me. So, passion. Then there are people who do it for enjoyment. Nadal plays tennis because he enjoys tennis, obviously. What is his name? This cricketer? Virat Kohli. Now poor chap is out, but out means he's down. But people like that, Tendulkar, Gavaskar, these guys they enjoy. Actually, somebody asked Tendulkar, what are your best moments, most enjoyable moments? You know what he said? When I'm out there playing practicing in the hot sun. You know what it is? You can't sit there, you can't stand there for half an hour. These guys are playing the whole day. How do I know? I live opposite Oval Maidan. I see these guys playing the whole day. And they are not professional cricketers, but what enjoyment they find in it. You look at them playing and you feel excited. Then there are people who work for happiness, for a sense of fulfillment. Simple acts. You cook for the family, how much joy it gives you. Incomparable with anything else, with any Bharat Ratna that you could have got. There's a friend of mine whose husband was an IIT engineer, and all his life he's worked in a factory. And now he's like kind of semi-retired. He says, I'm doing painting. So he does paintings and he doesn't sell the paintings. Interestingly, because he says, the moment you bring money into the picture in your mind, the painting goes. So he says, I do it for the sheer joy of painting and I gift it to people. So that is happiness. Then there are people who work to serve others. Oh, what a high it gives you. That high that you get from serving others, you don't get from alcohol, you don't get from drugs. I don't know, I haven't tried. But you don't get in any other thing. And very few people work for their own evolution just to become a better human being. That vision you must have. Never mind my age, never mind whether I'm in health or not. Every day, I must become that much better than I was when I woke up. What a fine thought. And there is that rare person in a generation who works for enlightenment, nothing short of that. That was the boy Narendra who went to Ramakrishna asking, have you seen God? He went around asking everybody, have you seen God? And Sri Ramakrishna in his wisdom said, yes, exactly like I see you, as clearly as I see you. And the same Ramakrishna taught him the Upanishads, which says, you can't see God. So in that one answer came a Swami Vivekananda. Buddha was born a prince. He had a beautiful wife, wonderful son, wealth at his command, a whole kingdom. And his father had vowed not to allow any sorrow to touch him, to come anywhere near him. In spite of all that, he left all of it and went in search of enlightenment, God. That is one in a generation, one in several generations. So, based on this, you have to ask yourself, see, this is for self-reflection. You have to go back and ask yourself, what am I working for? And be honest with yourself. At least you must be honest with yourself. So, based on this, ask yourself, am I working for profit or for a cause? It lies in the attitude, not in the action. You could be a businessman doing business all day long, but your attitude could be divine. And another person could be sitting in an ashram for years together. His attitude could be very selfish. So don't go by the action. It is the attitude that determines. Are you driven by desire, likes and dislikes of the mind, or are you acting based on obligation? My duty. And in India, that is eulogized. Duty. Do you find work drudgery or ecstasy? How do you feel at the end of the day? Do you feel, thank God it's over, now I can go enjoy myself? Or do you feel energized, excited, enthusiastic? Does it give you stress or does it give you peace? Does it stress you out? Does it pollute your mind with more desires or does it purify you of desires? Does it unchain you or enchain you further? For this, you have to look at, where does my action spring from? Only the body, then you perform mechanical routine activities. There is no participation of the mind or the intellect. He's like a factory worker. That's all he does throughout the day. But you and I are not like that. We are occupying positions at work for your thinking. So are you employing that? Or does your action spring from the mind? Are you emotionally inspired to do something? There was a lady who used to work for for our house, and her son got malaria, falciparum malaria, very bad. And she took him to hospital, and the doctor misdiagnosed it. She told the doctor, malaria hai. Where did she get that wisdom from? She's not a doctor. She's not even literate. Where did she get it from? Her love for her child was so intense that she got that. And it turned out to be right. When the doctor did the test, came positive for malaria. Or does it come from an intellectual conviction that I must, like yesterday we said, 75 years of the nation's independence. We should consider ourselves lucky that we are alive at this moment in the history of our country. Ask yourself, what have I done for the country? Apart from using its resources, apart from grabbing more than I should, apart from, that's what we do, we belong to the privileged class. We are grabbing all the resources of the country and complaining. And on top of that, we say, why should I pay taxes? What kind of attitude is this? Paying taxes is a given. Over and above that, what are you doing is the question for the country. And when you have that conviction, so look back at the pre-independence days, thousands of people, unsung heroes, did their bit towards independence of the country. That is why we got independence. What did we have at our command? We had no wealth worth the name, no money. We had no political support from anybody because we were fighting the British, powerful country at that time. We had no education. We were in the complete tamas. We were quite happy to be slaves of the British. What can you do with people like this? And yet there were people who worked and achieved the impossible. At that time, if people had taken bets, nobody would have bet on independence, India getting independence in 1947. yet we got it because of that conviction and dedication. Where has it gone? In a matter of years, it is simply evaporated. Or are you driven by your conscience? This is important. There are people in the world who feel that the whole world is based on flimsy things, on wrong things. You are using the resources of the world more than any other generation in the past and leaving nothing for future generations. You know, simple thing like the earth. We are in exploitation mode, isn't it? So you buy machinery, you want to use it for three, or what is you call it, shifts, so that you maximize your return from that machine. You have the same attitude towards the earth. But in ancient India, they used to grow, harvest twice or maybe three times. And after that, one season, give the earth time to rejuvenate. We don't. Where there were 2 harvests, now you have 5 harvests. How long is the earth going to keep giving? So, things like that. Exploitative. You get into exploitative mode, God help you. So, with this little uh, background on action, let's move now to the 5th verse.
नहि कश्चित् क्षणमपि जातु तिष्ठत्य कर्म कृत् कार्यते ह्यवशः कर्म सर्वप्रकृतिजैर्गुणैः.
Not even for an instant can anyone be inactive. All are helplessly compelled to act by the gunas, qualities born of Prakriti nature. So, the first thing he emphasizes on is that action is a must, it's the insignia of life. You stop acting, you're dead. That's why even surgical patients, within hours of surgery, they are made to get up and walk. You may, even people who go through bypass surgeries, a whole thing cut up, your ribs are cut up, they are made to get up and walk because action is the insignia of life. The quality is determined by gunas. Gunas, as we saw yesterday, did we see yesterday? No. Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. This is what I mentioned as Vedanta's contribution to the world. So, yesterday we established that action comes from Vasana. Vasana itself is of 3 kinds. The best, Sattva, pure. Mediocre, Rajas. And Tamas, C grade, horrible. So, Tamas is the state of indolence, um, laziness, indifference, inertia. Rajas is passion. What is the word there? Agitated, yeah. Passion, desire in activity, which causes mental agitation, restlessness. But there is activity. And there is some element of success that comes from the activity. And sattva is a state of poise, calm, serenity, power packed. You don't see that, but it's powerful. One thought is enough to generate millions of dollars. It's that kind of thought. So sattva has been respected, worshipped in our country. And you should be proud of that because no other country, no other culture in the world so much as even knows what sattva is. They unconsciously look for it. but it's not spelt out like it is in our culture. For instance, when Obama became president, there was a news article which said he's looking for Brahmins to help him run the government. A Brahmin doesn't mean Tam Bram. They're not coming to Chennai to pick up Brahmins. What it means is people capable of thinking, visionaries, whose thinking translates into the well being for the world years later. So, this is what it is, the sattva. Now, uh, so what happens is that tamas is a state of apathy where you don't have the energy to get out of bed. If you have a tendency to loll around in bed for a good half an hour after you're awake, then there is a good element of tamas in you. A sattvic person jumps out of bed, enthusiastic. A rajasic person can't sleep only, agitated. Rajas activity is there, but it's all selfish, self-centered, egoistic. It's all about I, me, myself. And sattva is selfless. So that vision that you have for people, you don't think of yourself because you're thinking of the totality. You don't identify with you as an individual because you know it's like this. When we were, let's say nowadays, in spite of the growth and prosperity, so-called prosperity in India, you step out of India, you could be a billionaire here. You step out of India, you go to the United States, that immigration officer looks at you with contempt. Indian? What attitude does he have towards? An American comes here, he could be coming from the ghettos, but he's American and all of us go running around him. Why? Because the country is prosperous. So a sattvic person has that totality vision. It's not about me. It's about the nation. It's about the world. It's about humanity. Tamas, therefore, is characterized by inaction. Rajas, inefficient action because the mental agitations come in the way of success. And sattva is empowered action. So it's like you have a powerful racing car, let's say a Porsche. Have you seen it? I was in LA once giving lectures, Los Angeles. And I mentioned this, I gave this example. And a girl sitting at the back, American girl, came towards me after the lecture and said, "You seem to like cars." So I said, "Yes." "You want to sit in a Porsche?" Because I mentioned it. I said, "Yes." I made the mistake of saying yes. She says, "I have a car right outside." She was a racing car driver. She made me sit in that car, two-seater. And you know what, those of you who've been to LA, you know what LA traffic is like? She simply took off. And when she took off, my stomach curdled because she went so fast. And she wove in and out of the traffic in LA. And by the time I was in it for 5 minutes, I was asking her, "Don't you get a ticket for speeding?" I was suggesting slow down. That kind of car, it is so much power. But if the engine is switched off, you can floor the accelerator, it won't move even 1 centimeter. Tamas is like that. You're in switched off mode. All your talent, your resources, everything gets wasted. You don't move. Rajas is like driving with the racing car with one foot on the accelerator, the other on the brake. So there is speed, but there is resistance. That resistance comes from desire and ego. Sattva is like taking off in a Concorde. It's unfortunately gone, but You know what Concord did? It broke the sound barrier. In sattva, you break the barrier of desire and ego, and you have a smooth journey through life. That is it. So, what he's saying is, not even for an instant can anyone remain inactive. But the quality of the action depends on your gunas, prakriti. And that doesn't change overnight. It takes time and effort to change your vasanas. So this is a very practical verse because it gives you that understanding of human nature, that people don't change very much in their lifetime, can't change unless you put in Herculean effort. So what do you do with people around you? Just accept. There's no point fighting. If you happen to have a spouse with a short temper, what must you do? You can't fight, because however much he or she would like to change, they can't. You can't change your vasanas. So what must you do? Accept it. Then it becomes a joke. So you understand the person has a short temper, but then forgets very fast. It's okay. You make a joke of it. You're amused. Today, there was a guy in Chennai. His wife was like that, very moody. So they had a joke. His friend used to call him from Mumbai and say, "Hi, what's the weather like?" And that guy would say, "English weather." You know what English weather is? One moment it'll rain, next moment sunny. So his wife was like that, English weather. So you make a joke of it. What else? Next verse.
कर्मेन्द्रियाणि संयम्य य आस्ते मनसा स्मरन् इन्द्रियार्थान् विमूढात्मा मिथ्याचारः स उच्यते.
So, um, I'm sorry, I'm getting confused with too many things. One who controls the organs of action while mentally dwelling on the sense objects is deluded. Such a one is called a hypocrite. So now in verse 6, he's talking about what do you do with your actions. You want to improve the actions. You don't want to indulge in the senses. What do? There are two categories of people. One, totally indulges, that is the vast majority. And when you do that, what happens? Two things happen. One is you get neutralized to it, meaning every successive contact gives you less and less enjoyment till you reach a state where it ceases to give you any enjoyment. But you must have it, because if you don't have it, it gives you displeasure. And a small minority of people keep away from it in the name of religion. So what are they doing? You have the next. Yeah. So here is a hypocrite who mentally indulges because he can't stop it. You have that vasana, thought, desire, action. Oh, okay. So you remember that vasana, thought, desire, action. So BTDA, from desire to action, only there they stop. So let's say you have a vasana for Chinese food. You get a thought for Chinese food. I hope I'm not planting a desire in you. A desire for Chinese food, and you go to a Chinese restaurant and eat. Now you decide to turn religious and say no Chinese food, no desire. So you're not dealing with the vasana, you're not dealing with thought or desire, you're simply blocking action. So what happens? Mentally, you're indulging, physically, you're restraining. Such a person, he uses a strong word, mithyachara. Two words he uses. Vimudhatma. Mudhatma is fool. Vimudhatma is super fool. Superlative he uses. Why? Because you're not dealing with the cause. You're only dealing with the manifestation. You are worse than a person who indulges. So don't ever do that. What must you do? We'll come to know in the next verse. What to
Yes,
do. Yeah, sorry.
यस्त्विन्द्रियाणि मनसा नियम्यारभतेऽर्जुन कर्मेन्द्रियैः कर्मयोगम् असक्तः स विशिष्यते.
But, O Arjuna, one who directs the organs of action to karma yoga while controlling the senses with the mind excels. So, there are three ways of dealing with desire. One, all of us do that. Both the body and the mind indulge, then what happens? You acquire more desire. Any action that is performed driven only by the desire, I like it, so I'm doing it. The result is that action boomerangs back on you as one more desire for the same thing. So that's no way to act. The second, body withdraws, mind indulges. Krishna calls such a person a hypocrite. I deliberately said Krishna, not me. Is Vimodhatma and Mithyachara, both. The best way, karma yoga, is about body goes through the activity. So you have a desire, you have a vasana, thought in the intellect, desire in the mind, action that continues. Then what is karma yoga? The mind withdraws and focuses its attention on something higher. Then what happens? Desires drop. Existing desires get fulfilled. You don't add fresh desires in your system. That's the way to be. Body may act, may not act. So if you understand the futility of the lower thing, it's like yesterday we saw a young girl grows into a teenager. Will she be playing around with toys anymore? Of course not. Why? Because she has grown to appreciate the thrills of teenage life. Hmm? She'll never go back. But if you are at a stage where you're not quite at the higher and you haven't still, you still have value for the lower, then what do? Go through the action, but with your mind on the higher. That is karma yoga. So simple. Why are people not doing it? They just don't know the art. They haven't learned the technique, right? So let's say you want to be fit. So you embark on an exercise and healthy diet and healthy exercise schedule. But you still have desire for good food, junk food. So what do? Like a doctor told me, it's not what you eat once in a way that kills you. It's what you do every day. So every day you eat healthy food. Then you have a cheat day. That is karma yoga. When you go home today and your family members ask you, what did you learn? I learned cheat day. That's what karma yoga is. So then we move now to the next verse, 8.
नियतं कुरु कर्म त्वं कर्मजायो ह्यकर्मणः शरीरयात्रापि च ते न प्रसिद्ध्येद कर्मणः.
Niyatam kuru karmatvam. Perform your obligatory action. For action is superior to inaction. It is not possible to even sustain the body without action. So he's talking about the value of action. Action is a wonderful thing that is a blessing to us, capacity to act. You must use it wisely. But we are using it most foolishly for selfish ends. But if you use it wisely, and how do you use it wisely? Just perform your obligation. So this brings us to the three types of actions. One, niyatam karma, obligatory duty. We all know what our our concept of obligation itself is so limited, so restricted. You think only of my wife, husband, and children. That's it. That's my obligation. And that too, food. Every mother is so worried about the vitamins, whether my child is getting the proper vitamins or not. Nature ensures that the child gets everything. You are an obstruction to it. Leave the child alone, he'll be healthy. That's what. Have you brought up your child to with the strength to face the challenges of life? Have you brought up your child with a higher vision, a purpose? No. You tell your child, do well in school so that you get admission to a good college. Why? So that you may get a good job. Why? So that you may earn a lot of money. Why? So that you may look after me in my old age. It's a rubbish attitude in life. Who brings up a child and says, do well so that you may contribute to the world? Huh? So that our concept of obligation itself is restricted. You have an obligation to your family, of course, but you have an obligation to society, the city you live in, the country in which you are lucky enough to be born, to the world, and most importantly, to yourself. Your primary obligation, like Swami Ramatirtha said, is just to be cheerful, happy in life. If you're morose, pulling a long face, you're suffering from a deadly disease. Don't leave your home till you find it in you to smile and be happy. Says Swami Ramatirtha, not me. So tomorrow, if you take leave, don't tell your boss, I was depressed, so I didn't come to work. You might even lose your job. It's not about that, you know. So that niyatam karma is all encompassing. How do you determine what your obligation is? Consult your conscience. That's why Shakespeare said, to thine own self be true, and it must follow the night as night the day thou canst not then be false to any man. Consult your conscience. But most of us are not performing our obligation. What comes in the way? Desire. I know I need to look after my old parents, but I have desires that are contrary to that. So what do? Push them into some old age home and do your own thing. In India, the treatment meted out to old parents nowadays is shocking. And yet, that is why in our culture, the parents are treated as God. What is the difference? See, the child is also helpless, totally dependent. The old person is also helpless, dependent. What is the difference? Your ambitions are banking on the child that he will grow and do things and make you proud. The old person has no such thing. And that is why you treat them badly. Very sad. And then when desires mount to such an extent that they cannot be fulfilled legally, ethically, morally, you cross the line and do all sorts of things. I don't want to name people, you all know. The criminals of today are not the poor, they are the super rich. Nishiddha karma. So make sure you perform obligatory duty and don't allow your desire to take over your personality. Next verse.
यज्ञार्थात् कर्मणोऽन्यत्र लोकोऽयं कर्मबन्धनः तदर्थं कर्म कौन्तेय मुक्तसङ्गः समाचर.
O Kaunteya, son of Kunti, perform action for yajna, sacrifice. These few verses, 9, 10, and 11 are outstanding verses. If you're serious about this, learn by heart. Verse 10 particularly, the next verse that we'll do. Perform action for yajna, sacrifice, free from attachment. The world is bound by non-yajna action. So yajna is an ancient Vedic ritual which we still continue to perform, and that is called Havan nowadays. You're familiar with that, right? So when there's a factory opening, whatever, including a marriage, we do fire worship. So fire is started in the Havan Kund, which you can see here, a brick wall trough. And usually it's not conducted alone, it's a group of people who do it. So the participants come and each participant offers ahuti into the fire. You've seen that? Ahuti is usually ghee or grain or little pieces of wood, inflammable material. So when you offer ahuti into the fire shoots up, and the belief is that Agni, fire god, is propitiated and blesses all the participants. But it has a very deep philosophical significance, which we have all forgotten. The Havan Kund represents the field of activity, your office, your organization, society, whatever, the goal that you're working for. Ahuti is your specific talent, ability, training, skill. So in a company, everybody comes to work in the morning with their respective talent. So a salesman does his bit, an accountant does his bit, a secretary does her bit, the chairman does his bit, a peon does his bit. If everyone works in a spirit of cooperative endeavor for the well-being of the organization, means offers their ahuti into the Havan Kund for the well-being of the organization. What happens? The profit potential of that organization is kindled. The organization makes huge profits. Then what happens? It's shared with employees, shareholders, stakeholders, society, country, everybody benefits. But if each one goes and tries to say, let me grab as much as possible for myself, then what happens? Bankruptcy. That's what happened to Air India. I hope it's not recorded. So bankrupt companies, you know what happens. Profitable companies, you know what happens. That's the difference. So if you want, that's what he says, this world is bound by non-yajna activities. You perform selfish activity, it's not an option. It will not give you profit, it will not give you prosperity, you will not be happy, and you won't grow. Why on earth are you doing selfish activity? This is something Krishna can't understand. He can understand the whole world except our foolishness. Why would you do activity that comes in your way? This is our culture, friends. And what are we doing? Precisely this selfish activity. No organization functions smoothly. Everybody is fighting everybody else. Even in the running of an NGO, there is fight. Why would you fight? Everyone's working presumably for a higher cause. So sacrifice is not a dirty word. Sacrifice is the sacrifice of your own lower desires so that your own higher desires can be fulfilled. Right? Like a tennis player wants to win the Commonwealth Games. All the athletes who won gold have worked very hard for so many years. They can't eat what they want. They can't sleep when they want. They can't take a Sunday off. So much they've sacrificed. In the Olympics, so During the COVID time, for 2 years, the athletes were not allowed to go home. All this they did because they were working for the Olympic gold. So their own higher desire. So don't think you're sacrificing for somebody else. It's a sacrifice of your own lower for your own higher. So this is it. And then now verse 10 is the crux. This is what I meant. Learn by heart and live it.
सह यज्ञा प्रजा सृष्ट्वा पुरोवाच प्रजापतिः अनेन प्रसविष्यध्वम् एष वोस्त्विष्टकामधो.
Having created humankind in the beginning, Sahayajna, along with the capacity to sacrifice, Prajapati, the creator, said, by this may you prosper. Let this be the Kamadhenu, wish-fulfilling cow of your desires. So, what he's saying is that we as human beings have been blessed with a special capacity, which is denied to all other species, and that is the capacity to sacrifice. What a blessing! Only you and I can do that. No dog can sacrifice. No peacock can sacrifice. And then he says, with this may you prosper. What he means is, without it, it is impossible to prosper. And all of us are trying to prosper without it. And then he adds, he says, let this be the Kamadhenu of all your desires. Kamadhenu is a mythological cow, supposed to be the cow of the sage Vasisht. Residing in heaven, Kamadhenu has the special ability to fulfill all your desires. So all you have to do is find Kamadhenu. Kamadhenu will say, Tathastu, finished. All your desires fulfilled. Don't go looking for Kamadhenu. Here he says, sacrifice is Kamadhenu. What a brilliant piece of advice he's giving us. Yajna is the magical tool by which you get both material and spiritual benefits. Look at people around. It is impossible to succeed without sacrifice. You think what is his name? Steve Jobs, right, had achieved what he achieved without sacrifice? Hard work? You think the Google has achieved what it has achieved without hard work? You think Starbucks has achieved what it has achieved without hard work? What are you talking about? And you want to sit tight and be a prosperous? This is horrible attitude to have. And later he talks about it. He says such a person is a thief. So keep working. Don't say, why me? In an organization, anywhere, it's a handful of people who keep the whole thing going. Somebody asked me, BMC, what's happening in it? So, you know who runs BMC? A handful of people who are genuine, sincere, hardworking. So you are getting your water in your taps because of the handful of people who are working. You get electricity because a handful of people are working. Not the totality. If everybody works there, Mumbai would be much better than New York. But if you have that capacity to work, consider yourself blessed that you have it, and contribute, give of your best. Right? Starbucks, when the handful of people got together and decided that they wanted to start they wanted to replicate coffee bars in Italy. So they just don't go and drink coffee there. It is an experience. So they wanted to replicate that experience. They went to Italy, went around, they did their homework, came back, and that Howard Schultz says, one of the founders, he says, apart from everything else, we told every person out there who's actually giving the coffee, making the coffee for the customer, that in addition to all the other ingredients that you put into that, don't forget to put one ingredient, and that is your heart. Pour your heart into every cup of coffee, and that is what has made Starbucks a phenomenon. There are people in America who say, I can't work without Starbucks, addicted to Starbucks. So I'm not advertising Starbucks, I'm just saying that's why it has become what it has become. Steve Jobs, every Apple product is a piece of art, good looking compared to others. Why? Because Steve Jobs was particular about that, about design, about the way it looks, about making the customer happy. Yesterday we spoke about the Japanese cars. What a thing. You buy a Japanese car, you have to forget about maintenance. It will never break down. Why? Because every Japanese worker thinks of Japan first. Do we think of India? You want prosperity, first sacrifice. You want to be happy, first sacrifice. The whole of nature functions like that. The whole universe functions with the spirit of yajna. The sun gives valuable light and heat. Have you heard of anyone getting a bill directly from the sun? We extract solar energy and then bill clients. Flowers give fragrance. No flower gives the fragrance when you are there to appreciate it, and it doesn't withdraw it when there's nobody. Rivers give water, life, and clouds give rain. No element in nature asks for anything in return except the human being. Therefore, only the human being suffers from depression, sorrow, misery. No other creature in the world is miserable. Think about it. Right? So change your attitude. And when we are miserable, we attribute our misery to somebody else. To whom? Mother-in-law. Easy scapegoat. Blame all your ills on the mother-in-law, or your boss, or your spouse. Human being that you are, nothing in the world can disturb you except yourself. At least accept that. Have the courage to accept the truth that yes, I am miserable because of my wrong attitude. Only then there is hope. Change your attitude, you'll be happy. It's not easy. Granted, it's not easy, but it's impossible any other way. So, think about sacrifice. Think of what you can do, small things, little things. Be polite to the people who work for you, your servants, your drivers. We are the most impolite. We still have that horrible feudal system, feudal attitude. And one day, these people are going to turn around like the French Revolution. Do you know in the French Revolution, the guillotine was invented to kill the aristocracy because they treated the lower people with such contempt. The queen said, if they don't have bread, let them eat cake. What an arrogant attitude to have. She paid for it with her life. So remember, every bad word you say to people who are lower than you, who don't have the wherewithal to fight you. You want to fight your equal. Don't fight poor people. Because all of that is going to come around and hit you someday. And it's not going to be funny, that's for sure. So, yajna is the way out. Thank you. We end for today. There is much more in this chapter. So, again, I'm making this appeal that the Prempuri Ashram Trust has done its bit. The Daya Foundation has done its bit. All we have to do is go home today and send out a few WhatsApp messages to our contacts, our friends, our relatives, and say, come join us. Like somebody said, it will be the 1 hour that you spend well invested for your future. Thank you. There is an announcement. Please remain seated for a minute.
With Raksha Bandhan just around the corner, give a gift that inspires your siblings, not just your siblings, but all loved ones. So this year we have a unique offer, and we have extended it for on the occasion of Guru Purnima, just for you, till Sunday, 14th August. And the offer is that you get 50% off on all the books and pen drives by Jayaji. So we have them over here. You can browse through them and pick your gift for your loved ones.